Very rarely do you have a situation where two Indian police forces are at loggerheads. Very rarely do you have a situation where two chief ministers are tweeting away against each other in public view, tagging the home minister of the country. And very rarely do you have a situation where the border between two Indian states feels like the border between India and Pakistan or India and China. That's the situation that presented itself in the border between Assam on the one side and Mizoram on the other. What is the current situation? This is an issue that goes back to 1875, with twists and turns in 1933, and even today the situation is volatile and it is tense. What happens from here? Joining us on this broadcast, live and exclusive on India Today at this time, is the Chief Minister of Assam, the BJP's most prominent face in the Northeast, Himanta Biswa Sarma. Mr. Sarma, welcome to India Today, and I want to start by asking you about your meetings with Home Minister Amit Shah, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You're in the national capital, you've had an opportunity to speak to the senior most leaders of the country. What have they told you? What have you told them? And where does the situation stand in the way that you see it at the moment?
I met Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Home Minister and brief both of them about the development that has taken place in Assam over last 2 months. And of course, regarding Assam-Mizoram border, I was on telephonic, I was in touch with them through telephone. So we did not discuss the issue afresh because we have resolved the issue by now among ourselves.
So as far as you're concerned, the situation that emerged along the border of Assam and Mizoram, do you think that that's been completely diffused? And because what happened at Warangate in Mizoram and Lailapur in Assam is something which is still being spoken of. Is that completely diffused according to you?
As of now, after the joint statement issued by both government, and we recognize the role of neutral police force, that is called CRPF, the situation has diffused. Peace and tranquility has returned. Normal traffic movement of goods and passenger to the Mizoram has started. So as of now, last 3 days, there is absolute peace and tranquility.
Okay, let's just go back to the moment when violence erupted at the border and understand from you at this moment, on the basis of all the investigation that you've done, what have you established about what happened? The charge from the Mizoram police and the government is that the Assam police had crossed over, which is when the Mizoram police thought it was an intrusion, and that's when firing was opened. You, on the other hand, say that it's the Mizoram police that was the violent party. At this moment, what is the investigation telling you? Who was at fault? Is it something that the Assam police did by itself? Did they go rogue? Are you still blaming the Mizoram police for what happened? What's your probe telling you, sir?
Rahul, we have issued a joint statement already saying that now onwards the police force will not be deployed at phase in the border by both the states. What happened on 26th? It is a matter of investigation to be carried out by Assam police. There is a case in Mizoram police also. I am all along of the view that if central government takes over the proof or some agency take over the proof, neutrally it can be assessed who was at fault. But having said that, I think those things we will do a bit later, because as of now we do not want to create another situation whereby argument, counter argument will take place and the present condition of peace and tranquility gets affected. So I think I am not joining on allegation and counter allegation at this point of time, but always the place of incident is known. You can search in Google, you can search through Survey of India. It is a part of India only. You can visit the site. So you can draw your own conclusion.
This is a border dispute that goes back at least to 1875, which is when the British first carved out Mizo land from Assam. Then in 1933, there was another iteration carried out, this time by bureaucrats. The Assamese see the 1933 border as the real one. The Mizos like to go by the 1875 boundary that was carved out. Given how old this problem is and how vexed land borders are in the northeast, how do you hope to solve it? Are you putting it on the back burner for the moment? Are you actively going to try and pursue an attempt to try and solve this border dispute?
As you told, Rahul, that this border dispute has a long legacy. It was started in 1872. British finally settled it in 1932 when Mizoram was part of a district of Assam. The dispute was, the land was being considered the boundary. There was an idea about the boundary. Then 1972 Union Territory, 1985 full statehood. So Parliament of India has given a constitutional boundary to the state of Assam. So according to us, there is a constitutional boundary. According to Mizoram, there is a historical boundary. So this dispute should have been resolved when state of Mizoram was carved out from Assam. But unfortunately, at that point of time, the dispute was not resolved. It was a new state. The dispute could have been resolved easily because Assam has willingly, unlike the Andhra and Telangana, Assam has willingly agreed for the bifurcation, trifurcation of our state. So we have allowed entire district to go out of our state. So by that judgment, you could have allowed another few square meter to go out of the state. But at that point of time, dispute was not resolved, and that is why in a northeast, you see repeated border clash, repeated ethnic engagement. So these are the unfortunate part of the northeastern region's history.
So I want to step away for a moment from this border dispute to your term as Chief Minister. Ever since having taken over, there is a growing sense, as we speak to people in the northeast, that Himanta Biswa Sarma is trying to be the super CM. You are Chief Minister of Assam, but other states are feeling that you're trying to play the role of the Bada Bhai and that you're trying to act and push your way as the super CM of the northeast. They don't particularly like that. How do you respond to this?
Rahul, the kind of things we are exhibited from the very facts that during the conflict also it is the Assam police who got killed. Sometime in national media, people start talking as if we have gone and we have killed somebody in Mizoram. So it is the Assam police who gets killed. And I have requested my police that you need to be restrained because all these states were carved out from Assam. So we need to keep the spirit of Northeast alive. And I do not think that there can be any allegation from me at my personal level. But yes, as a Chief Minister of Assam, you need to do your job, you need to do your duty. And I think that is in case of every CM who has to do their duty towards his own state.
But instead of dialing down on the rhetoric, by tweeting publicly, you were seen as fanning the flames, rousing Assamese sentiments against the people of Mizoram.
Rahul, I think you have again. Basically, you must go back to the deadline of 26. I never tweeted anything. Only when Chief Minister Mizoram Zoramthanga tweeted, I telephone him and I clarify our position, the position of Assam, and also for the larger audience in national media, I have replied to his tweet. It was never any tweet was done by myself. You can go for the deadline 26th and you will see that I have only answered what the kind of concern raised by the Chief Minister of Mizoram for the larger audience. But if you go to my mobile, you will see I talked to the Chief Minister of Mizoram during that time of the event at least 8 times, and every time I dialed him.
Okay, because you did put out a video which had about 20 armed men holding what looked like machine guns. They were in battle fatigue, looking like they were sitting in a clearing in a forest, but you were saying this was in response to what?
Yeah, these are the Rahul, these are the issue, because at that point of time we were of the view that these are civilians.
Okay. The other question that's being asked about your tenure as Chief Minister, Mr. Sarma, is whether Himanta Biswa Sarma is trying to portray himself as the Yogi Adityanath of the Northeast and especially of Assam. In a state with the kind of minority population that Assam does, questions are being asked about whether you're trying to enforce a new form of Hindutva in the state. How do you respond to all the commentary, the articles, the editorials that have been written asking whether Himanta Biswa Sarma is trying to be the Yogi Adityanath of Assam?
I have never been to Uttar Pradesh, and in last many years I have not seen what Yogi Adityanath has done, but I am sure that all the Chief Minister of BJP ruled state are implementing a common agenda. So my agenda and Yogi Adityanath agenda, my agenda and the agenda of Karnataka Chief Minister, my agenda and Chief Minister of Gujarat agenda cannot be different. We are implementing a common agenda, and that is my mandate too.
Now, in this clash, there were multiple theories that came, some from you, some from spokespersons in your government or supporters, initially seeming to blame your crackdown on cattle smugglers for the clash, then blaming the drug mafia for the clash. At some point in time, the refugees from Myanmar were blamed from the clash, then also the forest mafia, or the crackdown on beef trade. All of this was blamed for the clash. So, for the clash between Assam and Mizoram, given all the options that have been doing the rounds, who do you think is really to blame, sir?
I think now we have issued a joint statement for peace and tranquility. At our level, we should not go and post-mortem it. But as a journalist, you are always welcome. You can visit Assam and Meghalaya and give your independent peace of mind to the national audience. But we have signed a peace declaration. We do not want that image of Northeast should suffer at the national mainstream. So I have sent my minister to Aizawl. They have welcomed my ministers. Together they have issued a joint statement for peace and tranquility. And now that has been restored. I do not want to post-mortem it. But as an independent journalist, you can always do that.
Now, you've placed restrictions on the trading of beef in Assam, where beef was fairly commonly consumed. Now, questions are being asked by opposition leaders like Debabrata Saikia of the Congress about whether this bill will create communal friction. The question about, say, for example, the 5-kilometer rule that you've placed on the sale of beef, where you're saying that anything 5 kilometers away from a temple is where beef should not be sold. Now, questions being asked about, any place can become a temple, and whether this 5-kilometer rule will possibly create communal tension.
I mean, I am contrary to the view that once this legislation is passed, Assam will see a communal harmony, because everybody will be sensitive to the religion of others, and it will pave the way for a communal harmony. 13th, I am to reply on assembly on this particular bill, and my viewpoint will be that if Muslim restrain from eating beef in a Hindu locality and Hindus show equally respect to the Muslim, I think things will be much better in my state.
But the fact also is, sir, the constitution guarantees to people the right to their own individual choices. And when the state tries to lay down the rule, very often there is a backlash from people who don't like what the government is imposing on their personal choices and decisions.
I think sometime we should collectively read the directive principle of state policy, and sometime we should also read Gandhiji's life.
Okay. Now, you in the State Assembly said the government was planning a...
And one thing, Rahul,
Yes.
one thing, that communal harmony will not come through appeasement. It will come when everybody enjoy equal rights, everybody's religion is taken care of. So if you start respecting the religion of others and he start respecting my religion, then things will be much better, and that was the dream of our founding fathers. Nobody thought at that point of time that someone will even debate that in front of a temple whether beef should be consumed or not. In 1947, our founding fathers presumed that this idea will not even come to anybody's mind, that in front of some temple I'll even think of eating beef.
Okay, you said very recently that Hindutva is a way of life, followers of other religions are descended from Hindus. Now, in a state like Assam, given the population of the minority community, these kind of questions, these kind of comments are raising questions about whether Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma, in an attempt to prove that he is genuine blue-blooded BJP RSS as can get, is now trying to overcompensate, because you came from the Congress. When you were in the Congress, you used to roam around in meetings with the minority community, also wearing skull caps at times. Are you now trying to overcompensate?
Rahul, I do not have to compensate, because already I am Chief Minister and I have elected in a BJP nomination for the second time. So it is not question of proving anything. But when it comes to Assam, I know what should be the roadmap. I had a vision, I have a vision, and I am sure that many in Assam endorse my vision. So we are working together. So many things, sometimes I feel surprised that in national media people are writing editorial after editorial, article after article, but in Assam neither Muslims are questioning this, neither Hindus are questioning this, because people know that things what we are doing for the good of the society. So okay, you must also flag many of the initiative Assam government has taken. We have discussed with, we have started discussing with the intellectual of the minority community. We are discussing about financial inclusion. We are talking about women empowerment. So I have personally visited many houses where minority girls were being raped. We given adequate, we arrested culprits. So we are on move. In Assam, nobody can say that discrimination is going on among the religions. So you must read. So when I am fighting against drugs, it is the Muslim community who is supporting me most, because most of the people who are abusing drugs, the sizable numbers also come from Muslim community. So I think you should also, if you start focusing on the good work we have done in last 2 months, you will realize that a complete different approach of governance is being going on in Assam.
You also told the State Assembly, Mr. Chief Minister, that the government is planning a population army that would distribute contraceptives and spread awareness on population control. Once again, explain why population control is as important as it is to your plans, and secondly, how do you assuage concerns about whether this again is being done with an eye on the minority community? How do you respond to that?
I mean, this is the biggest issue in front of Assam. Our population density in certain districts, maternal mortality, infant mortality, low education, low literacy rate, all in Assam we are attributing to the growth of population, not commensurate with the idea of a decent family. So in Assam, everybody agree that we need to maintain a decent family size. So this population army, ASA worker, they will move around, they will distribute contraceptive, because many a times the people who lives in riverine area, they do not get all this at their doorstep. So we are trying to help people for a decent family size, and I don't know that why people are questioning these instead of supporting all these things. If I am asking somebody for a decent family size, if I am thus asking to reduce maternal mortality and infant mortality, people should support it. These are the approach which will save our country. Otherwise, how our country will be saved?
In conclusion, I want to ask you about whether there is an informal blockade that's still going on. For all practical and official purposes, the borders between Assam and Mizoram have now been opened, but truck drivers and locals say that there's still because of the advisories that were put out, that there is still an informal blockade.
Today, no, Rahul, by morning I have taken the data from the border. Already 400 trucks has gone, and there is absolutely peace and tranquility in the border.
And are you hopeful that you will find a solution to this border dispute, that in your term, given the cross-state linkages that you have and your ability to speak to members of the NEDA across the northeast, that you will be able to resolve some of these long-standing border disputes?
Rahul, some problem we will be able to resolve, but something it will be very difficult to be resolved, because by now the ethnicity has changed, people has established their home, people has established their loyalty to a particular state. So you need to evolve various new mechanism to resolve this dispute. Two petitions are there before Supreme Court on with the Assam, Nagaland and Assam Arunachal border dispute. So far as Meghalaya, we are talking very in a positive atmosphere. I think some dispute will be resolved, but some dispute we need help of a independent third party like Supreme Court of India.
Okay, you've also started using satellite images now to try and demarcate the border. Do you think the use of technology can potentially provide a solution?
We have recently signed a understanding with the government of Nagaland that we are going to map our border, we are going to maintain status quo based on that satellite imagery. So with Meghalaya also, now we are taking photograph through drone, UAV and satellites, so that things can be resolved. Many a times I say this village is X, Meghalaya refer the same village X as Y. So we need to reconcile our revenue records. So with Meghalaya we have made 4 formula that will resolve this border dispute on the basis of history, contiguity, administrative convenience and finally will of the people who lives there. So with the Meghalaya we have evolved this 4 formula, and I am hopeful that some of the complex problem with the Meghalaya will be resolved. Supreme Court of India is hearing a title suit with Arunachal and Nagaland. I am hoping that some resolution will come from Supreme Court of India also in regard to these 2 states. But meanwhile, we all have decided, with exception of Mizoram, that we will maintain status quo with the help of satellite image and drone survey, and Union Home Minister is encouraging us to come to this conclusion, and we are coming to that conclusion.
Well, no one who's watching would ever want that 2 of the 7 sisters engage in shooting wars. That's a nightmare scenario. This is not India, Pakistan or India, China. These are
Rahul, only one thing I like to add at the end, that when I am of the opinion, when you carve out a state, define the boundary, you do not keep the pain there. So when Congress carve out Assam-Mizoram, Assam-Meghalaya, Assam-Nagaland, they should have been defined the border and they should not have kept that issue alive.
Well, that's the burden of the past that we carry at the moment. We will track this very closely. There is a very uneasy peace that prevails, but you are confident that the blockade is over and that using satellite technology you will be able to ensure that the situation doesn't get violent again. We will track this very carefully. For the time being, for joining us, Chief Minister of Assam, Himanta Biswa Sarma, thank you very much.
Thank you.